welcome to a very special episode of the Angry Sun Zone. I'm Santo.
And I'm Sean.
And I'm Alex.
Yeah, and today we're going to be going through our favorite games. We've all got a list of 15 with various amounts of ranking done between them. And yeah, we're going to go over them and discuss them. These games mean a lot to us, so it should be a pretty interesting discussion. We also don't know each other's lists, so that'll be a treat to find out.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in the most knowledgeable position here. I think I have some ideas about Santo's list, but I also think his list has changed since last time I heard it, so it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, we'll see how good your memory is on that one.
Also, I might have forgotten half of the games. That's true.
Yes. So, I've got a actual, every game on my list is ranked. So, I'll be saying the numbers. Because everybody likes numbers.
Yeah, I've also put mine in an order. So I have numbers. It's really tough. It's really tough to rank these games, especially going through and narrowing down what are my favorite games of all time, and then you kind of got to make decisions that are tough.
Yeah,
they're going to make you unhappy. I recommend you don't do it.
Unless you're a crazy person like me, who has kept this list for 4 or 5 years. But anyways, let's get into it. This might be a long one. So, I suppose I'll start. Because I'm pretty sure the first game I talk about, it's a conversation starter for sure. Number 15 on my list is Super Smash Bros. Brawl.
Ooh.
Now, we've definitely mentioned we all love Smash. And I'm looking at the TV right now, and we have Smash Ultimate up, as we were playing it right before we started recording. And the reason why I chose Brawl as my favorite of the Smash Brothers games is that I feel like it's the most complete package. Now, yes, Smash Ultimate has the most characters, a mind-boggling amount of stages, and some cool other features to it, like the Squad Strike and whatever. But Smash Bros. Brawl, I feel, has the best single-player offering of all the games, with the Subspace Emissary mode.
It is pretty good, actually. It's pretty much a full-fledged platforming game in its own right.
Yeah. Now, I don't actually think that mode is very fun or good, but they tried, damn it. And if you're going to make this incredible, ambitious crossover game, what I want to see is characters interacting with each other. And the cutscenes in Subspace Emissary were great for that. Some of them were super cool, super badass. Some of them were genuinely hilarious. Like when Luigi showed up and just got by King Dedede.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay, yeah. That's one thing I will say. Nintendo's always had this, strange knack for putting out these amazing, incredible cutscenes in some games that are just, so random. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
I doubt this game made any of our lists, but Mario Tennis...
Oh my god!
The cutscenes,
yes.
the one for the GameCube, the cutscenes in that are honestly, you should watch them on YouTube, even if you've never played that game, because they're absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, the opening cutscene is it's 5 or 6 minutes long, and it's just Wario and Waluigi doing hijinks. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wario and Waluigi's hijinks are the highlight of that.
I have to confess, and I don't know if you guys have done this too, but I actually I watched the whole thing as a movie after I beat the game.
It's probably out there on YouTube, compiled that way too.
Yeah,
I bet.
definitely.
I bet the tube's got it.
Yeah.
So then the other thing, I'm just thinking, how are we going to deal with duplicates here?
I mean, I'm guessing that both of you have a Smash Brothers game on your list.
Yeah, so
probably. If you want to talk about it now, that's fine. Or we can...
Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right.
I do have one more other specific thing to say about Brawl, and that's it had the tournament feature, from the gate, Smash 4 didn't have the tournament feature in this entire goddamn run, despite them saying once that, hey, we're going to put a tournament feature in here. And I also feel like Brawl also introduced Final Smashes, which are cool, though they've been a bit dumbed down over the years, or a bit samey now. And the crop of characters that they added to Brawl, I think, was the last set that I'm like, wow, these were really great additions across the board. Like Ike, awesome. Wario, amazing. King Dedede, everybody likes King Dedede.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Snake, you love to hate him.
Oh, it's fucking Snake.
Oh, Snake.
Yeah.
Alright, so for me, I did a tier list. That's what's happening here. Alright, and so, coincidentally, now that we're talking about the Smash Bros. Series, we're going to start at the top with S tier. Super Smash Bros. Melee. That one was my favorite. And I think it was just the atmosphere that it created, and my experience as a gamer. Because Melee was very fast-paced. There was a high amount of technical learning that you could do to get better at the game and win over with powerful combos and stuff. And the community at the time was very different than what we experience today, where we can be locked in indoors, and playing with each other. But back then, it was very much we would all be at one place. We're all hanging out at somebody's house. We're practicing and getting better and having a great time doing it. We were experimenting. We glitched that game. I remember there was the black hole glitch.
Yeah,
and then there'd be things like Luigi's Super Rocket, and Samus with the weird glitching of her moves to be able to fly across the map in ball mode. It was a blast for me, and I would also just say that I think we have sunk probably thousands upon, perhaps even tens of thousands of hours in our lifetime. I would imagine, it's a lot.
I mean, collectively,
collectively,
tens of thousands.
Collectively,
we might hit 5,000 between all three of us. Yeah, but wow, yeah, I know for a fact that my copy of Melee, my save of Melee has about 250 hours logged into it. Just that one.
And that was not the one that we played the most on.
Yeah, it was definitely Sean's we played the most on. We played a fair amount at my house. I definitely...
Yeah.
So, somewhere in my house is that memory card still. We can crack it open and see what's on there.
I gave away my GameCube to a mutual friend of ours, but I kept my memory card that had my Melee save on it. Nice. Because that's got sentimental value. Despite the fact that I got rid of my copy of Melee, somebody knew
got the data.
Somebody I knew was gonna buy it at a game store. I'm just gonna give you mine. Whatever.
Shit. Yeah, that's nice.
All right.
I should have gotten him to pay me for it though, because copies of Melee are going for a pretty penny these days.
Oh wow. Yeah. So I'll just say a bit. I also chose Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I ranked it at number 6, so that's a point of contention already. I don't know what else you put on that list better than Brawl. Fucking great game. But yeah, I actually say I'm going to focus on a little bit of a different topic on that, which is the music in Brawl, and especially maybe for the younger gamers in the audience. You may not realize, even in Smash Ultimate, a lot of the music in the Smash Bros. Newer games is actually still from Brawl.
Yeah, and a lot of the best stuff, too.
A lot of the best stuff, yeah. At the time it came out, it was just incredible. I mean, no game studio had released what was essentially, I would have just paid money for the album alone, because it was basically compilations of remixes of the greatest hits of the entire Nintendo catalog.
Yeah.
The best, the fan favorites, the best songs of their whole back catalog from the NES to the GameCube, basically got remixes. And that was absolutely incredible, and it's still incredible. It's so incredible that it still makes up a huge chunk of the content, the musical content of even the latest Smash Brothers game.
Yeah.
And the music still... Sometimes I just put on music from Brawl because it's amazing. It's very well done. And then also the best Final Smash in the series, Luigi's Negative Zone, only exists in Brawl, and that makes it clearly the best version.
Yeah,
as a Luigi name.
That's a good point. And on your point about the music, though, like, they didn't have to do that, because if you remember Melee, they had like one track per stage, with a few stages having alternate tracks, and then Brawl comes out, and they even gave you a menu that you could go into to adjust the play rate of each individual song for each individual stage, and each stage had 6+ tracks associated with it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, totally groundbreaking. Even today, I mean, I think of fighting games in general, and I can't think of any other fighting game that has this sort of musical selection that Brawl does.
No, I can't think of one either.
Yeah.
Fighting games have some really kick-ass music.
They have great music, but it's generally one, maybe two per stage.
Or a lot of the times it's one per character.
Yeah, or one per
character themes.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's a lot more we could say about Smash Bros, but I think we'll move on, and I'll move us up to the next spot on the list. So my number 15 game on my list, actually Metroid Prime.
Nice.
So Metroid Prime, I think it really just... and I'm talking about the first one specifically. The first Metroid Prime is, in my opinion, the best Metroid Prime game. Some of the technical improvements in 2 were nice and stuff like that. Some of the other ones, 3 and Hunters, I didn't really like because they really messed up the sort of formula of a Metroid game, which one nailed, which is you are a bounty hunter alone on an unexplored planet, or on a planet you haven't explored. And Metroid Prime just absolutely nailed it. Here's Nintendo coming in with a cutting edge shooter, great UI, absolutely gorgeous for the time, gorgeous graphics, and those graphics still hold up because they have character and they have atmosphere.
The art design is so strong.
The art design in Metroid Prime is incredible. And I think the first Metroid Prime in particular had the strongest art direction of them all. And everything about it, the music especially too. The music in Metroid Prime, Phendrana Drifts has this haunting just do 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 do. We obviously can't put the actual track in because of copyright reasons. But it's incredible, and you have these these soft melodies, these stronger melodies in other parts of the game, and the music really supports the atmosphere as well in having this just haunting this haunting loneliness, and that to me, in addition to the good controls and great kind of transition to a 3D Metroidvania kind of exploration, backtracking style of game. They absolutely nailed it, and it's one of my it's really in terms of a single player shooter experience, I think it's one of the best ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nintendo did they have a very good track record of changing their 2D franchises to 3D. I can't think of one that failed.
Yeah, no, they did a great job with all of them. Mm-hmm. Can't think of any that went from 2D to 3D poorly.
I mean, I haven't played the N64 Pilot Wings game, but that's the only one that I have a question mark on.
Well, N64 Pilot Wings did not make my list. N64 Pilot Wings was weird, honestly.
You know what? That's not even a good example, because the Super Nintendo version of Pilot Wings was pretty much 3D anyways. Not 3D graphically, but movement-wise. You're moving in all three dimensions. Mostly due to gravity.
Yeah. Yeah. I could say more about it, but I think we want to keep going.
Mm-hmm. All right. Back to me? Okay. So, my number 14 is Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne. Now, I feel like a lot of people have their, one go-to RTS. For some people, it's one of the Command & Conquers. For some people, it's StarCraft. Some people, it's Age of Empires. For me, it was Warcraft 3. Now, I've probably, in terms of individual game, if we look at series, Smash is probably the series I've put the most time into. But in terms of an individual game, Warcraft 3 has to be up there. Because I did everything in that game. I played through all the campaigns. I played a ton of skirmish matches against AI. I played a ton online, both custom maps and even, a little bit competitively, because they had weekly tournaments that I always entered and did shitty at because I don't know how to micro. Well, yeah, just everything in that game was just so cool to me. All the four different races just felt so different and cool. So many of them had a ton of different directions you could go with, how you wanted to compose your army. Whether you wanted to go, fast rush with your cheap units, or you wanted to get these units that had a ton of abilities. The hero units that you leveled up during the game and got loot for from, neutral monsters. So many cool ideas in that game. And one of the other things, this game isn't going to be on my list, but it was my introduction to Dota and MOBAs in general. And I know I'll never ever be able to get you two to play MOBAs with me, and that's fine, but I sunk so many hours into original Dota for Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
So many goddamn hours. Even played it a couple times at this internet cafe in Richmond called Rush Arcade.
Rush Arcade.
Arcade.
Got some good fucking memories there. We might have to do an entire episode on Rush Arcade.
Probably the only. That's probably
That's
probably the only place I have played Dota.
Yeah, and that concept, the MOBA concept, is really cool, and it's even more amazing that it came from a custom map, essentially a mod of this just RTS game.
I think it only could have come from an RTS like Warcraft, though, because it's honestly such a weird concept, the MOBA kind of genre.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason that it happened was because Warcraft 3, obviously you have this combination of standard units and hero units, and it was that sort of, that was directly, I think, the inspiration. You wouldn't get Dota out of a custom StarCraft map. People made tons of weird custom StarCraft maps.
Oh yeah,
lots of them were really fun and strange and cool, but nothing like Dota. Very little.
There were some StarCraft maps that had weird level up mechanics where you would get certain resources for doing certain things, and then if you got enough of them, you could level up.
The StarCraft maps that were like that, I would say, were more like a dungeon crawler, in style, than like Dota, though. Mm-hmm. There was nothing with this sort of overarching team versus team mob and level up dynamic with heroes that. That's something that it was really the introduction to hero units into that RTS that probably sparked the idea for the thing in general. 100%.
Yeah. All right. So next on my list, so we are still on the S tier, and so the next S tier is Command and Conquer Red Alert 2.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Oh and man, here we go again.
More RTS.
More duplicates.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you got this on your list.
I also put Red Alert 2 on mine.
See, I told you. Everybody's got their one RTS that they love.
Hold on. Okay, Sean. Yes. Allied disc or Soviet disc?
Soviet disc, comrade.
You
Wrong.
fucking communists!
Wrong. Yuri's Revenge.
Ooh.
Oh yes. Ultimately, thinking about the expansion is its own separate thing, but at the same time, I would include it with that game.
It's an expansion, yeah. It counts.
And so, what I would say is that with Command and Conquer Red Alert 2, it was the peak of Westwood at its most at the deepest into its craft. It had the zany cutscenes. It had the memorable characters. It had it had an incredible formula where the back and forth, especially so when you're playing online with other characters, you're picking a faction, and those factions had unique units. And often the way that you could exploit or win with those unique units often crafted your entire strategy. For example, France with their grand cannons, which are these giant defensive behemoths that they're very deadly when they're next to an enemy base. They will absolutely wreak havoc. And or, for example, on the Soviet side, you'd have the Iraqi Desolators, or one of my favorites, the Libyan bomb trucks. So there were certain strategies that really required a lot of skill to be able to deter. For example, the super weapons played huge into the strategy. There was something that could make a area of your an encompassing area and any units within it invulnerable for a period of time. And so you could sneak these bomb trucks. You could actually preload them with timed explosives, and then load them all up into a landing craft, and then invincibly park this landing craft in the middle of your enemy's base, deploy them all, and just watch as the entire screen explodes and your enemy is instantly extinguished.
Is that the Iron Curtain?
Yes, the Iron Curtain.
There's actually a almost similar strategy that you could do in Warcraft 3, where you could, with the humans, you could make one of your units invisible with the sorceress, send them back into the back of the enemy's base by the resource line, and then if you had an Archmage hero at level 6, its ultimate ability was mass teleport. So you could just teleport like an army into your enemy's base and just completely destroy the resource gathering, and then hike it out.
I think one of my favorite strategies in multiplayer. I really liked the prison tank.
Oh, the prison tank is so cool.
Prison tank's so cool. But in particular, I would always make sure when I was using my prison tanks that I would. So there was also a minor progression system where every unit can become veteran and elite. Yeah. And I'd always make sure to pull out the veteran and elite prison tanks. And eventually, if you can make a little 3x3, because it's somewhat grid based, and so you can kind of get a little just block of 3x3 9 prison tanks. And if you get 9 prison tanks in a 3x3 square, they get increased range when they level up. Not all. I can't remember if that applies to all units, but with the prism tanks, they get increased range and damage as they level,
speed
because they're a bit slow. And so if you get you get a bunch of these elite prism tanks, you just cluster them, and it just racks. Especially if you have some fodder around them, protecting them. It was my favorite. It was my favorite way to kind of slow, especially in a game that's dragging out, because the prison tank is a bit of a higher range unit.
I do remember
higher cost unit.
Yeah. So my favorite allied strategy relied on the hinge unit of the spy. So the spy can disguise himself as any other infantry, including the enemies, and they might think that your spy is actually one of their units. And so, as an allied player, I'd always be gunning to try and jam one of my spies into another allied player's battle lab, which is a structure, an advanced structure. And when I did that, I would receive the Chrono Commando. Now this guy is lethal because with one attack, he instantly destroys any building, and he also has a teleporter pack, and so he can jump all over the map and rip through an enemy's base faster than their defenses can respond.
Yeah, so Red Alert 2 had a great multiplayer, super fun. It wasn't always very balanced, but it was easily one of the most fun multiplayer RTSs. Mm-hmm. And the single player was great too, with the great cutscenes, the absolutely hilarious cutscenes, and like they hammed it up so much with those. And then also just like a lot of the units were just cool, right? Mm-hmm. Like you got like prism tanks that like shoot lasers and
Tesla
stuff. cannons, like crazy radiation weapons, like psychic mind control stuff with Yuri's Revenge, and of course the best unit in the game, the Dolphin.
To counter the giant squid.
Oh yeah, the squid. Squid versus dolphin.
Soviet squid versus Allied dolphin.
That's awesome.
Good times. Yeah, and the community was really long-lasting. Long after I started playing competitive, did I realize that you could use a trick of the game, a glitch, in order to put your spy into your own allied battle lab. And by doing that, you could unlock the Chrono Commando for yourself. It was quite the interesting experience. Unfortunately, by that time, all we were playing was Yuri's Revenge, and it only worked in Red Alert 2.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I can't tell.
It was good they fixed that. It would have been very imbalanced. There would have been Chrono Commandos flying around everywhere. Yeah. Lethal Armada. Right. So, Alex?
Yeah, so my number 14 position is kind of a bit of two games, sort of, but Roller Coaster Tycoon and Roller Coaster Tycoon 2.
Oh, fuck yes.
As well as the expansions. And in particular, the reason I kind of count that as one game is that it actually lets you like switch between them, like the first game and second game, I believe. I believe that was I can't remember if that was in the original game.
I don't think it was.
It is, however, in the open source remake. Or not, actually, yeah, they basically remade that game engine in an open source thing because people are crazy.
Yeah, including the person that made Roller Coaster Tycoon in the first place.
Sid Meier.
No.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Crap. I forget the person's name, but they coded pretty much everything by themselves, mostly in assembly.
Yeah, that's
just because, like, if you think about how old that game is and what it's doing, like it's simulating like over 1,000 park members, each with a bunch of different like information about themselves and stats that change constantly,
as well as a whole bunch of
Chris Sawyer.
As well as a whole bunch of like physics simulations.
Yeah, and the
rides for all the rides, like
a true accomplishment.
Yeah, that game blew me away at the time because it legitimately, technically, was very advanced for the time. But also, it's just the best park It's not just the best park management sim. It's basically the best business simulator type game, I think. I think it still holds up. I do not like the newer Roller Coaster Tycoon games. They don't feel right to me.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, the graphics aren't even that bad. Like,
the graphics are like
the graphics
really good.
Still look good.
They hold up.
Yeah, they hold up surprisingly well, considering how old the game is.
You know what made that game so great? He had a hobby riding roller coasters. He rode over 600 roller coasters in his lifetime.
Who was this again?
Chris Sawyer.
Chris Sawyer. Right. That's I remember the name now. But yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon it's a solid game. It's got interesting campaigns. The campaign's kind of interesting. You get like different challenges, and that really helps a lot. There's you have it being forced around the like constraints of the land. I definitely think helps. Yeah, but also like
landscaping was so expensive.
Yeah, landscaping was so expensive.
And you always started like a lot of maps. You started with a loan, so you had to like dig yourself out of that.
Yeah.
Even the starting map, you had like a $10,000 loan or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right away, it throws you into it. It's like manage your park as a business, and But also, it's really cool. Like, you get to design your own roller coasters. That concept, like, has not gone out of style. And I just, especially the open source, like, open Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, like, it pretty much fixes what few flaws the game had and basically makes it it was already the best. And then
they added multiplayer.
And fans fixed it up and added multiplayer because
why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they made a game so good that 20, 30 years later, when was this game published originally?
Late 90s, probably.
Yeah, late 90s. So like 20 years. So it's like 20 years old, and the fans are still out there, like, remaking the game engine and adding new features. Like, that's the kind of staying power that you get from a game that's so tightly developed and so well made that it's just it's a classic.
Yeah. I wonder too if it was like the first game that was like blank tycoon, because there have been a ton of other like big business tycoon, game dev tycoon, all these other like hospital tycoon. Well, maybe it wasn't called hospital tycoon, but a bunch of other games like blank tycoon. And I have a feeling that Roller Coaster Tycoon probably could have spawned all those, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do believe that I think most of the original Tycoon games were all by the same developer, which, if memory serves, they went out of business years ago.
Infogrames? Infogrames, whatever, however you want to pronounce it.
Infogram. Fuck, I can't remember.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, they had weird stuff. I remember I got, like, this weird pack of games from them. There was, like, a bunch of old games. A lot of them, honestly, were bad. Didn't hold up. Roller Coaster Tycoon, though, holds up.
Yeah.
And 2 is basically the best, but nowadays, the open source mod is the definitive version.
Yeah. That's a solid pick.
Oh, yeah.
Why you put that there? Okay. So my number 13 is going to be Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen. This is a game title that is a combination of two different Queen songs. Because Japanese people love Queen. And
Who doesn't?
And so do we. I don't know. I've heard people not like them because they're a bit too corny at times, which they are.
Yeah.
Like, okay, listen to Bohemian Rhapsody and forget that is one of the greatest songs of all time. It's a weird song.
It's a very weird song.
It's a very weird, like...
I mean, I don't know how legit this is, but I know the Queen sort of biopic movie they made has some scenes where they're talking about the publisher, and the publisher is like, what the hell is this Bohemian Rhapsody shit? Like, you want me to publish this? This isn't a hit. You know, this other song, I'm in love with my car, that's a hit.
Well, I may be wrong on this, but I think Bohemian Rhapsody might not have actually been a hit when it was first released. I thought it was Wayne's World that made it a hit.
I thought it was.
Well, whatever. That's something to look up later. We got games to talk about. Speaking of which, Ogre Battle,
games, not
March
music.
of the Black Queen. We'll start a music podcast some other time. But so this is a game that it's a bit more obscure. It's on the Super Nintendo, and Ogre Battle is part of, I believe, a 9-part or 13-part series, of which only 4 or 5 got made. And this game, if there was one game that I want a spiritual successor to more than anything, it is this game. Because Ogre Battle, there's two different, quote-unquote, types of Ogre Battle games. There's the Tactics Ogre ones, which are, tactical RPGs in the vein of, Final Fantasy Tactics or anything like that. But the mainline Ogre Battle games are these weird combinations of a JRPG RTS. So that's a lot of acronym right there. But you have this big army of all these different individual units that you form into squads of 3 to 5 units, depending. And you've got like, you know, knights, ninjas, all these different classes of humans, as well as monsters. So you can put like a Cerberus and a Griffin into your party. And the cool thing about that is different types of units give you different movement opportunities. So like you could have a Griffin and a couple of knights in a party, and they would be able to fly. So they'd be able to move around the area super fast and go over water super quickly. And so there was a great diversity on what units you could use, and there was also like you had to go around these maps, take over towns, and try and beat the boss in just a linear or somewhat non-linear progression of maps. And it's just such a cool concept that I haven't seen really realized anywhere else. And how the battles take place is that each individual unit has a number of attacks they'll do in the battle, and then the battle will end, and it'll say who the winner was, and the loser gets like pushed back like a decent amount, so you can continuously like push your opponents off of towns that they might be sitting at. There's a variety of like equipment and items you can get. There's a big focus on like the tarot cards that have these like wild effects in battle, and like 12 different endings on this freaking Super Nintendo game. And yeah, it's such a cool ass game that I want some kind of proper sequel to one of these days, but that requires Square Enix getting off their ass.
Getting off their giant pile of money?
Yeah, Square Enix needs to stop blaming all their Western published games for sinking them as a company and start putting out niche games that only I will buy and will still probably sink them as a company. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Japanese developed games on my list. Just putting that out there right now.
Speaking of a Japanese developed game, Guns, the Duel.
Oh,
that might be Korean.
I think.
You know what? I could be wrong there.
It might be.
A lot of that, like a lot of early online stuff like that.
All right,
was Korean.
I will clarify it for us.
But oh my
Yeah,
god,
so
fucking
Guns,
the Duel.
Yeah.
Now there,
That-
you are correct.
my
South
God.
Korean by Mait Entertainment.
If that game was made today, I guarantee it would have just loot boxes up the ass.
Oh, dude, the Koreans were on that shit early, and
It had that,
there's
yeah.
even a.
I mean,
I
I
forget
know
which
you.
studio,
I
but-
know you could spend real money to like. I think do something with the game, but I can't remember what.
Yeah, probably. But there was, I forget which Korean studio, but there was a Korean studio who had been making these like online games forever. That once microtransactions started to become a problem, they were like, "Yeah, we know. We've been doing this shit for years. You're oversaturating the market, and you're going to ruin everything. You goddamn mobile developers." Yeah, Guns the motherfucking Duel. What a game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember just the whole archetype with the different weapons that you could choose. You could have the dagger, and then your playstyle would be completely different than someone with a sword, which would be completely different than someone running around with a pistol. And yeah, it was definitely. It felt a little bit like the Matrix at times, especially with all the glitches that were accepted as canon, and this is how we're going to need to play. So there'd be, people dashing through the air with their knife, and they've managed to get some sort of elevation, and they can just literally hover in the air like a wizard, flying around with their death stick pointing outwards. Yeah. And it was great.
There's almost something like fighting game-esque about that, because like how combos in fighting games originally was like a glitch, and how like wave dashing in Melee or whatever, like some of that stuff wasn't intended at all, but just like through how the physics worked in the game, you got these like crazy mobility options that you could do. And Guns, like the mobility stuff in Guns was excellent, like running on walls, backflips and shit.
It was excellent, even for the time. I mean,
it was completely new at the time.
It was totally new at the time.
I can't think of anything that's come close to that for a while after that, until you get to... I think you'd have to go as far as to like Titanfall or something to get something that I think feels as smooth now as I think Guns did back then.
Yeah, I haven't played it in so long. I mean, maybe it was super clunky, but or maybe it would feel clunky now. But I mean, it's almost like, it actually reminds me of like Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, but with guns.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is an honorable mention. That,
very much so.
I sadly could not put on my list.
Wait, this list isn't quite right. Let me back up.
Oh, yeah. Alright.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, use the Sands of Time. It's on the list now.
There we go.
What a mistake.
Who's next?
Probably me. Yeah, so my 13th pick here is Mario Galaxy 2. And Mario Galaxy 2, I think, is just, it's pretty much the most solid 3D like single player platforming game I think ever made.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, Odyssey's good. I actually haven't really played it that much, to be honest. But even from what I've seen, like, Mario Galaxy 2 is just like, it's incredible. It's not that old, and so the graphics still hold up, especially if you're using an emulator.
Dolphin does some good shit.
Yeah,
they did good work on that emulator.
Yeah, but I was tempted to put Mario 64 on this list because I love Mario 64, and obviously it's on so many of these lists because it is incredible and it was revolutionary. But honestly, Mario Galaxy 2 is a better game.
Preach.
I've gone back and played Mario 64 and I still love it, but that camera is frustrating as hell sometimes. The controls are still tight, but the camera issue in Mario 64 is certainly frustrating sometimes. And also, in Mario Galaxy 2, you can ride Yoshi.
That just seals the deal right there. Yeah. He's not waiting on top of a castle for you to get 120 stars. He's just available.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's my 13th pick, Mario Galaxy 2.
Awesome. Over Mario Galaxy 1.
So, the main thing between 2 and 1, to me, is that I think 2 actually just had slightly better level design.
Okay.
They had sort of refined a few things from the first one. And the first game in particular, there were some levels where they just sort of, like, you could tell they were sort of phoning it in. And also, like, some of the levels were just weird. They really focused heavily in some levels on this pointing mechanic. And I thought those levels were actually probably a bit of a weak point in the first Mario Galaxy.
Yeah.
And I don't remember them really having nearly as many or in the same way as they did in Mario Galaxy 2. Like, Mario Galaxy 2, pretty much the whole game was just really good. Pretty much every level was great. And it was paced a bit better, I think, as well, than Mario Galaxy 1. Although, again, some of the music in Mario Galaxy 1 also just absolute bangers, but I feel like you can say that about basically every Mario game.
Fantastic. Alright. Now, speaking of amazing music, my number 12 is Theatrhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call. This is the Final Fantasy rhythm game, or should I say the sequel to the Final Fantasy rhythm game that was released on DS. Or 3DS, sorry. Now, I am a huge Final Fantasy fan, despite the fact that I think a lot of the games are actually not good. But one thing that I can unequivocally say about them is that they have some of the best music in any game series, ever. And so, making a rhythm game around this, like, I also like rhythm games a hell of a lot too, so you already hooked me with this thing. So, but what makes this so interesting and cool is that, well, it's a 3DS game, so it uses a touchscreen. And that can be like a little bit, janky at times, but it works well enough for what you're doing. But the structure of the game is that you build a party of these different Final Fantasy characters, and they all have different abilities and stuff that impact how you play this rhythm game, where you can have you've got all these characters that do magic damage or physical damage, and buffs and debuffs and healing and stuff. So your ability to last through a difficult song is actually based on how how survivable your party is.
Huh.
So it's not like, oh, you fail, you miss these many nodes, you fail. It's just like, you can make a party where you essentially have no fail on, just because you can heal so rapidly. And the more damage you do to the monsters that show up while you're playing the songs, you get more items and at the end of it and different collectibles, and it's just it's a complete fan service game for Final Fantasy, basically, and that's exactly what I wanted. That and a amazing collection of Final Fantasy music to play through. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you hear that, Nintendo? With the best music library? Make a rhythm game!
Mario DDR, come on.
Wait. I don't think...
That happened.
Did that happen?
That did happen. And the credit song to Theatrhythm is a ska medley.
Nice.
Of Final Fantasy music. Just absolutely incredible. Can't say enough good things about it.
Alright, I've been mulling over which to do next on my list, and I would say for this next S-tier game would be Chrono Trigger.
Wow, awesome. I wasn't expecting you to put that one on.
My goodness. I've never felt such powerful emotions when playing a game, Chrono Trigger. And it was interesting because I didn't actually play it when it first came out. I actually visited it for the first time actually pretty recently. So that game, every character's story, just the whole overarching journey, the fact that you can keep on going deeper and deeper past the ending that you encountered the first time. My goodness. I've gotten so lost in that game and the story that it told. It's one of those games that I will never forget.
Yeah, it's truly timeless. Like you said, you came to it a lot later. I also didn't play it when it first came out, but it also completely captivated me. Oh, yeah. It's not on my list, but it's incredible. I think it's.
Yeah, I didn't put it on my list either, but it's up there. It's definitely one of the best RPGs.
Yeah. If I had to try to think objectively about JRPGs, I'd probably put it at number one. It's just every piece of it is absolutely masterclass, and it does a lot of things that I've still never played a JRPG that has done so many things as right as this game does them.
Yeah.
And again, speaking of great music, bangers.
Absolutely.
All killer, no filler in that game.
Yeah. I remember the music actually was the thing that kind of hooked me the most into Chrono Trigger, as well as just the sprite art in general. I think a lot of late SNES, because I think it was a late SNES game.
It was very late.
And the thing about late SNES era games is that developers had pretty much learned how to push 2D sprite graphics basically to the limit. Not of the hardware, but even of design.
Mostly.
For the most part. But I mean,
you still didn't really get
pixel
lighting.
Yeah.
Dynamic lighting on that stuff.
There's some newer, there's some newer stuff like pixel lighting, or maybe people might even drop I've seen particle effects in sprite games these days. Yeah. But in general, the pixel the pixel art aesthetic, Chrono Trigger was that era. It was pretty much close to the limit of the aesthetic, and it absolutely killed it in the art department. The sprite work in Chrono Trigger is probably... I'd say it probably has some of the best sprites like at all.
And a ton of personality
Yeah.
with them as well.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's all in the like the art direction, which was so strong.
Yeah, like, and so the people that made that game were collectively known as the Dream Team, where it was people from Square who made Final Fantasy and people from Enix who made the Dragon Warrior games, Dragon Quest games before they merged for real. Like they made that game, and they got Akira Toriyama, who did like Dragon Ball and some other anime, to do the character designs for it. So you just had all this talent coalescing on this one game, and yeah, it shows.
Yeah.
Sorry, we kind of took over the conversation there.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, Sean, you really want to put it up.
Anything else to say about Chrono Trigger?
You know what? I think we've covered it. We're good. Go on, Alex.
All right. So my number 12 game is Dwarf Fortress.
Oh my god!
So
I see we're including unreleased games on our lists.
that's right. We're including games that are still in public alpha.
Have they still not reached beta?
I don't know. They might be calling it a beta by now.
I don't know.
I don't know, and it honestly does not matter.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Dwarf Fortress is the most ambitious game ever planned.
Yep.
Essentially, it tries to be a full-fledged fantasy world simulator, and its goal is to simulate an entire fantasy world and then let you manage, start and manage a fortress of dwarves in this fantasy setting.
Yeah. And we're not talking like Sim City where you got like your one plot line and there's like your neighbors that might have a small impact on what you're doing. No, we're talking about an entire goddamn world.
Yeah, no. When we say like an entire world, we mean to the point where it has the most, as far as I know, it has the most advanced, like, just simulation. Maybe not the most advanced, like, in specific details, but the most comprehensive, I would say, simulation of a world. Like, we're talking, before you even start, it simulates an actual fantasy history, including, like, world events now. Yeah. At this point, last time I checked in on the game, because the game is still undergoing ongoing development. And last time I checked in, like, they had actually added a lot in terms of history simulation, where there's actually entire civilizations that, like, and histories and heroes with epic battles and stuff, and that all gets simulated, and then can potentially even affect what's in the world, because you might, like, they haven't. I can't remember if they got to this point, but the goal is to eventually, like, literally even be able to start wars, because you can, like, take over a whole civilization.
Yeah.
But, you know, while we're talking, like, oh yeah, the game's gonna have you, like, potentially in charge of, like, a whole civilization of, like, fucking dwarves that's going to war with the elves. Also, it goes down and simulates water movement, and you can, like, build mechanisms. Like, to the point where, like, people have built computers in Dwarf Fortress, kind of like how they've built them in Minecraft. In fact, in some ways, the simulation is actually similar to Minecraft in that it's essentially voxel-based, although it has absolutely no graphics to speak of, really.
ASCII, baby.
Yeah, the base game is an ASCII. Though I would recommend playing with a graphical tile set, which there
are some very good ones out there.
There are some very good ones. There's also plans to release a graphical tile set version on Steam, although I don't believe it's been released yet. And anyway, so yeah, the simulation's incredible. It also simulates individual dwarves, and you know, you get to watch the dwarves go about their business and do what you've told them to do. But like when it simulates individual dwarves, what I mean is like, it simulates relationships between the dwarves. It simulates like combat. Combat is resolved
Holy
by
shit.
simulating organ damage.
Yeah, you can individual finger breaking and just like
Every single bone, I think.
Yeah.
Like bone, muscle, and like physical organs and blood loss.
Yeah.
Like these are all simulated for the combat system. It's
and
insane.
for your dwarves, as well as the variety of monsters in the game, which all can have like different unique attacks where something might bite you, and that is simulated in a completely different way than a sword slash,
Yeah.
where
yeah.
they might latch onto you and continue to do damage over time and stuff. It's completely insane.
Yeah. And then in terms of some of these details aren't necessarily completely obvious to the player. The things that are obvious is it's sort of a top-down view of your area that you've embarked into your fortress. I'm mostly talking about fortress mode. There's also an adventure mode, which I basically didn't even play because I spent hundreds of hours in that game, and I can't even like begin to talk about the adventure mode because it's a different game.
Yeah.
It's like an entirely separate game, basically.
And the amazing thing about adventure mode is that you can do an adventure in the same world that you spawned and simulated for your fortress, and you can even like go and search your fortress that you made in fortress mode. It is there in adventure mode.
Yeah.
And you can go around and you can look at all like the engravings that you might have made of the world events that happen for your individual fortress and shit.
Yeah, so it's a really cool game. I think it's one of the most interesting simulation games ever made. If only because it's so in depth that you get just these incredibly interesting, unpredictable kind of events that happen because so much stuff is simulated, and you get these sort of emergent events.
Yeah, it's one of the best games for creating just like player stories.
Yeah. That said, it is the most I think it's the most challenging game to learn. I think I've ever played.
Yeah,
by far. It has a terrible, actively hostile user interface. I'm not joking. It's you'll see what I mean if you look at even with a tile set. It's still there was a really good tutorial on how to learn the basics of interacting with the interface on YouTube. I think by a guy named Captain Duck, which was about 50 hours to watch. And if you're following along trying to start a fortress, you'll probably spend 100 hours just to learn the interface.
You like mouse movement?
No.
Too bad.
Yeah. This is a game where fans build memory scraping Excel spreadsheet tools to speed up their play. Like, I'm not joking. It's ridiculous. It's cool. It's one of the most interesting games ever. I definitely recommend you check out some of the many Dwarf Fortress stories online, if nothing else. Elephant Murder is a classic.
Boat Murder.
Boat Murder.
There was a lot of elephant murder in Boat Murdered. Yes.
Sorry, Boat Murdered. Yeah, Boat Murdered's a classic. There's also some really good comics people have made about Dwarf Fortress.
Like, I'll give you like a small story from one of the fortresses I made, where embarked on. I spent all this time selecting what I'm going to embark with, what skills all my individual dwarves are going to have, and there's like even when you first embark, there's like thousands of options of what you can bring with you. And so I embark, and what's right next to my wagon when I embark is a goddamn bear. And so immediately the bear kills one of my dwarves, which is a huge blow at the very start. It killed one of my miners.
Ooh.
Luckily I had two. But then like another just like crafts dwarf said like, nah son, killed the fucking thing, wrestled it to death, and then was immediately elected mayor. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Game.
Oh, another example of like the ridiculousness of the combat system. I once had a fortress where one of my soldiers, kind of defenders of the fortress, was a female dwarf, and she had recently given birth. and was holding her child. And unfortunately, she was sent into battle. She was fighting with, I think, some goblins or trolls or something, and lost her weapon. And having lost her weapon, she then decided to use her baby as a flail to attack the enemies, and killed the enemies. If I remember, I can't remember. I think the baby also died though, and then she was very sad. And I'm like, what? What even is this? It's a game that doesn't pull punches in that respect. Also, I think it might have been a bug, but like, why would she do that? A bit strange. But then one of the things about Dwarf Fortress is that it's always had the most amazing bugs.
Yeah.
It's had the most amazing bugs ever.
Dwarves are a very hardy race. Probably thought the baby could take it.
Yeah. Sometimes they can.
Yeah.
That's the stupid thing. But yeah, and then well, and it's really interesting too, though. You know, like simulating the whole relationship aspect too. There's a lot of games that have tried to copy Dwarf Fortress. Some of them are more approachable. I think RimWorld is one that's kind of popular right now. It's like a sci-fi themed Dwarf Fortress that's much more approachable to people.
There's Space Station 13.
I haven't played. I thought that was an RPG type game.
I would say in many ways it is an accurate simulation of a spaceship.
Okay. Anyway, anyway, Dwarf Fortress is amazing, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up on Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah. Move on a little bit
before the whole podcast becomes Dwarf Fortress, Dwarf Fortress, Dwarf Fortress.
This is now the Angry Dwarf Zone.
Angry Dwarf Zone. Angry Dwarf Zone.
Alright. My number 11 is a 2-for-1 special because I'm including 2 games from the same series in one convenient little package. And that's 999, 9 Hours, 9 Person, 9 Doors, as well as Virtue's Last Reward. These are 2 like visual novel light adventure games that are part of a series called the Zero Escape series. I'm not including the third game, Zero Time Dilemma, on here for various reasons. I just think it's a bit of a weaker game. I didn't enjoy it as much. But these first 2 games they're 2 of the best examples of storytelling in games I've ever played. And now, obviously, that has some impact, some influence, or whatever, on them being visual novels primarily. Like, they're able to tell the story with, a bunch of text, and because that's all the game is, you're forced to read it all. No, looking up lore entries on a terminal to get the full story. But what these games do incredibly well is that the first game, you have to play through the game multiple times with a bunch of different branching paths based on these 9 doors and these 9 characters that you're with, all with their own backstories and motivations, and like they're all just like captured and found themselves in this place. They woke up on this ship and they have no idea how they got there, so it's this mystery to find out, okay, what's going on, what happened to us, how are we going to get out of here? And there's moments of like incredible tension and dread. The sound design in this game is amazing. And some of the puzzles are not the greatest, but I will say the final puzzle in 999 is one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen. I highly encourage people listening to find a copy of these games and play them, so I won't spoil them. Maybe in a future episode where we talk about like awesome game moments, I'll spoil it then, but it's just absolutely incredible. And Virtue's Last Reward, it's a lot of the same similar concepts as the first game, but instead of multiple endings, you have this giant branching timeline of all your different decisions that you make that you can jump to at any point. And so you find out individual bits of the story through one branch that you can take with you in your memory or like written down on a notepad to another branch. And so you're using this to kind of find out what's going on. Again, it's a similar setup where these 9 people are in this place, they don't know how they got there, and they're just trying to find out what's up. And it actually uses the different branches, and the information you bring between those branches is an incredible like story hook that they have. And the stories in these games are also insane. Like, the first game has a gigantic sidetrack about Ice 9. So that's awesome.
Love Ice 9.
Oh, yeah.
All of these conspiracy theories, and, like, the second one has a lot to do with the Schrodinger's cat experiment. That's a huge theme in it. The theme of just, like, the quantum whatever.
Quantum whatever sounds about right.
I don't pretend to be an expert in science. In fact, I'm not. But yeah, both of these games are just absolutely fantastic. The first one's on DS, the second one's on 3DS and either PSP or Vita. There might be versions of them available on other platforms now because so many just like somewhat obscure Japanese games have been getting ported to PC lately that I wouldn't be surprised if they're there. But yeah, I would highly encourage everybody listening to this to go give these games a look. And well, I will say one more thing about them though is that they are fairly dark and there's a lot of murder in them. Sometimes pretty graphic murder. So if they're not lighthearted romps, they're serious business.
Oh yeah, it looks like it was released on Windows now.
Nice.
As well as PS4.
Cool.
That's for $9.99.
If one's there, I would assume all of them are, because there's no point in having one without the rest. The story's connected between the three games in bonkers ways. Well, that's all I have to say about that, though.
All right. On the lines of Alex's last dive into the simulation with Dwarf Fortress, I'm going to talk about another simulation game, which you've actually heard me talk about before, and I'm going to put it at S tier, and that's Noita. And so, if you're starting from the beginning of our podcast series, then you'll have heard me talk a little bit about it. But to sum it up, Noita is a Finnish game. So a lot of the enemies and just descriptors of things may be in Finnish. And if you're wondering why these enemies have such perplexing names, now you'll understand. So basically this is a game in which it is a simulated world made of pixels. And so sand behaves like sand, water behaves like water, everything catches on fire, and you're probably going to die pretty soon. It is a roguelike. Your objective it's quite interesting. There's an ending that you can achieve by completing the quest to slay a giant beast, and then there's endings beyond that. In fact, because each world is procedurally generated, at the boundaries of it, there's actually a impassable barrier, or at least impassable unless you design your escape. And if you design your escape, you can enter into parallel worlds. And these parallel worlds are almost like the Upside Down in Stranger Things. There's things that are not quite right about them, and you can explore into the beyond. And it's basically the first time that you manage to beat the game will be a great accomplishment. And then when you realize how deep the game can go further beyond that, your mind just tends to start melting and bubbling, and you sink deeper into this simulation game. And what I will say is that the controls are simple. The amount of skill you'll get to be able to survive longer, and your increase in ability to judge risk is going to be the number one thing that gets you from floor to floor. Is the ability to know kind of when to call it and say, I need to make a rush for this, for safety, because if you don't do that, then the run is over and you've got to start again. So that's what I'll comment about that.
Yeah, and this, based on the just like high level of interactability with the world and your wands and how you play it, like this is also a game that's perfect for creating stories. It seems like every time I talk to you, Sean, you've got another story about how a Noita run just like went spectacularly well and then immediately wrong.
Yes. One of the funniest things that I ever did was so in this game, The spells that you get are generally magical of one variety or another, and then there's some non-magical spells, things like missile or nuke. And so one time I was experimenting with the nuke spell, and if you're questioning as to how powerful a nuke is, and you're thinking, oh, you know what, I'll maybe fire it at that enemy on the screen with me, I will say that this weapon is so powerful that the entire screen is obliterated, and if you're standing in there, you'll be obliterated too. And so very careful planning must be used in order to fire off this weapon. So I had spawned a wand that fired a nuke on every spell, in addition to another spell. And this is quite terrifying in its own right. And then I faced an enemy, and in the process of my battle, I was switching to go grab some Berserkium. Berserkium amplifies the damage that you do. And then I went to go fire it off, and the screen was just beyond obliterated. There was there was absolutely nothing. But amazingly, I had an extra life. So I died in a flash of fire and came back to life thanks to my extra life. And now I'm falling out of control in this giant chasm that was created by this nuke in an underground cave. And I get to the bottom of it, and I see just chunks of gold raining from all the dead enemies around me. And then I see there's one of the basic enemies. He wields a shotgun. He's not that powerful, but he can pick up wands. And he sees the wand that I was holding when I died, this nuclear wand, which is now standing on there on the ground. And he grabs it. And what does he do? Well, he's a mindless zombie, so he fires it. And that was the end of the run. And it was so funny.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And
that's interesting, though, that it's a fairly, well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a fairly new game. I forget when it was actually released.
2019, I believe.
Okay.
It's relatively new.
Relatively new, but, yeah. It's not all nostalgia here on the Angry Sun Zone. We play new games and can like them. We're not just grouches. Despite the fact that I think the latest game that I have on here is 2015.
I don't even know what the latest game I have on my list is.
Well, that's something to think about later, after you've given us your next game.
Yeah, so, well, technically it's Dwarf Fortress, because it's not released yet. Anyway, yeah, so my next game, my number 11 spot is Team Fortress 2. And Team Fortress 2 is actually a hard game to talk about these days, because...
Yeah, you said that again.
It is a different game today than it was when it was released, than it was several years ago. It's been updated and updated and updated. It still gets updates. Valve has supported Team Fortress 2 to an incredible extent. Not always for the best, in my opinion. But that said, I've spent probably close to 500 hours in Team Fortress 2. It's an incredible game. I don't quite know, because I seriously, Steam wasn't even tracking playtime when I started playing Team Fortress 2. That's
Wow.
how old the game. That's how long the game has been popular, because it's been popular from day one. But it is, in my opinion, one of the best. At times, it is one of the best multiplayer team-based shooters out there. It's very interesting, especially in the early days. The game has a very strong design philosophy. You might not realize it because of the cartoonish graphics, but a lot of work actually went into making those graphics very meaningful.
Yeah, I've heard the character designers for that game talk about the silhouette test, basically.
The silhouette. Yeah, I mean, they have a really interesting commentary that's like built into the maps in a lot of Valve games, actually.
Mm-hmm. They're very good at that.
Yeah, and the one for Team Fortress 2, like they talk a lot about like the design philosophy of the game and the silhouettes and how important that is in a class-based shooter, because it allows you to just at an instant recognize what you're up against. They of course completely destroyed their own design decisions with the hats with the cosmetics.
Hats.
But yeah, the game is a very well. It's very. I want to say it's a very well balanced game too. Like the classes are all meaningfully able to contribute, though it's weird nowadays.
To a point, yeah.
Well, especially because like all these new weapons and stuff, like they've made it a lot more difficult to keep the game sort of nicely balanced.
Yeah.
I think the game peaked and then kind of got worse, partly because of some of the issues with the like there's the silhouette issues, right? But and then there's the issues where just like the team composition doesn't quite make as much sense because some of the originally the weapon choices were very distinct, where each class had a clearly defined role and kind of expected play style, and that was important if you're playing in multiplayer because you could look at the classes that make up the team and be like, oh, we don't have a pyro. If I play pyro, that's going to be good because it's going to allow me to contribute to like more of a close combat ambush character. Now the pyro has a bunch of other weird weapons, and other classes have other weird weapons, and it's overlap. Same, yeah.
As much as I like to play the sniper with the bow, I thought that was really fun. That fundamentally changed how the characters play.
It fundamentally changes the character in a way where now it's not clear even what the role of that character is, and it makes it harder, especially if you're playing in like just public servers, to figure out like what the team needs in terms of like the actual combat roles. So I'm actually not as big on the game these days. And then also like the thing what I'll give credit to Valve for with Team Fortress 2 is I'm not sure if it was the first game with loot boxes and like cosmetics, but they 100% popularized it, especially in like Western games, and especially the whole hat thing. Hats were not a thing, really, until Team Fortress 2. And the hats originally were meant as just a bonus. Like you'd unlock,
you get them. They just drop randomly in a lot of cases, right?
No.
You had people idling to get hats.
No.
Or was that something different?
Not originally. Okay, so originally what Valve did was, because they were trying to just like give back to the fans for being so like because the game was still really popular, and they were like, yeah, we want to support the game. And they were releasing updates for the characters. And partly that was because they never finished their Meet the Team series of shorts, which are amazing. The Meet the Team series, as well as they released a short film that's like 20 minutes long in the style of their shorts. That's incredible. It's absolute comedy gold. One of the best short animations ever made, in my opinion. I think it's called what's it called? I can't remember.
I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't know.
You haven't seen it, so we'll have to show you. Anyway, so originally they were releasing some more of these shorts, like Meet the Pyro, Meet the Spy. Those are two, Meet the Medic. And when they released those videos, they would release an update that gave some new weapons, as well as a hat to the character. And to get them, you had to complete achievements to unlock them.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
And typically the hat achievements were more a bit more difficult than the weapon achievements, because the hat was meant. I think you had to complete all the achievements to get the hat.
Yeah, and some of them were fucking hard.
Whereas you only had to achieve like some of them to get the weapons, and basically people just went bonkers over the hats for some reason, like just completely crazy. And the fans kept demanding more hats, and then Valve kind of relented and just added. And eventually, they added hats into an update that weren't character specific, and like you said, dropped randomly. that was the beginning of the end. Because then later they changed it with another update so that, now you don't just randomly get hats. Now you randomly get a crate that might contain hats or weapons. And then they started incorporating fan-made like 3D models and weapons into the boxes. And sometimes they weren't very well thought out or well designed.
Yeah.
That's
Same
the
thing
thing.
happened to Dota too.
That's the thing. Especially a lot of the weapons that have been added over the years, they just aren't very well designed because they are literally fan creations. And Valve, being a business, sees that they can get free assets for their game, essentially, and puts them in. Yeah. But some of them have really not been good additions to the core gameplay. That being said, Team Fortress 2 is
the good old days.
The good old
Team Fortress 2
I think
were fantastic.
I think somewhere around I think the peak, personally for me, the peak of the game was probably after they had added most of the weapons for the various characters, because the first batch of weapons were actually pretty well thought out and made sense, and added more variety to keep it interesting for people who'd been playing the whole time. But once they introduced the loot boxes, it really went downhill fast, personally. It's still a good game. I've played it, and I still love it, but I do think the cosmetics and loot boxes really, they went too overboard with it, probably because it makes them a lot of money. But unfortunately, it did damage. Did damage the game, personally. Being a team-based multiplayer shooter, you really are at the whims of the community actually being there. And not only has the Team Fortress 2 community always been popular, but unlike a lot of other games, it's still a good community where you can pick up the game for the first time and not be completely so unskilled that you are unable to even play the game. Especially because there's a variety of servers you can choose from at a variety of skill levels. And so, anyway, that's what that's some thoughts about Team Fortress 2.
Awesome. So that's going to end this leg of our journey through our favorite games. I think going through 5 at a time makes the most sense. So look forward to parts 2 and 3 in the coming weeks. We also have an email address now, angrysunzone@outlook.com. So if any of you listeners have any questions, comments, rants, wants to tell us how bad we are, you have an outlet for doing that.
Yeah, you can scream at us about how we didn't put your favorite game on the list and then make a podcast about it.
Yeah, you can scream at us for a game that you're like, oh my god, why didn't you put this game on the list? And then not realize that we might be able to talk about later because we have more of our list to go through.
It might be number 1.
And just remember, if you're going to be angry, wear sunglasses and get in the zone.
Yeah, so, bye everybody.
See ya.